I made a trolley problem memes video last month, and you guys seemed to enjoy it quite a bit. So I thought that we'd look at some more memes together, this time brought to you by Established Titles. More on our sponsor for today in a moment. The artificial intelligence trolley problem. You've been replaced by a fully sentient robot you have designed. Would you still be held morally responsible for the outcome of the situation? So here we have the classic trolley problem, 5 people versus 1, but instead of you getting to pull the lever, it's an artificial intelligence of your design. And one of the biggest problems of artificial intelligence research, and one of the scariest, is known as the alignment problem. That is, if we are able to develop a fully sentient artificial general intelligence, will its goals align with our own? If it doesn't, then this artificial intelligence could seek to overcome us or destroy us or enslave us if it becomes more powerful and intelligent than we are, and we're getting in the way of the goals that it's developed for itself. So the question at hand is, are you personally responsible for the decision made by the artificial intelligence, given that you're the one who created the artificial intelligence? This question actually has real-world practical implications. For example, artificial intelligence is being used to control self-driving cars. Self-driving cars use artificial intelligence to recognize dangerous objects, or if a crash has already happened, artificial intelligence will take over to scan the environment and see how it can minimize the damage. So situations like this trolley problem can actually arise in real life. If artificial intelligence is driving a car down a road, and that car has to make a decision whether to swerve into one person or to swerve into 5, that's a decision that artificial intelligence is really going to have to make. And the question here might be something like, look, if Elon Musk designs Teslas that have some kind of artificial intelligence making these decisions, is Elon Musk personally responsible for every decision made by the car? Intuitively, I want to say no, but it is a no with one caveat. The reason I say no is because the thing that makes artificial intelligence so revolutionary and extraordinary, but also so terrifying, is that it really is its own beast. It's its own intelligence. This isn't something that human beings have typed into a computer and let run out its course as designed. It's really reacting in real time to the real world, just like a human brain would do. For example, look at the images being produced by artificial intelligence programs such as DALL-E 2. You may have seen these flooding the internet recently. These are images that are created via prompts. You simply type in what you want to see, and artificial intelligence will produce that image for you. This isn't some collage of other images that exist on the internet. It's not finding images of these different things and putting them together. It's creating brand new imagery from scratch using its own intelligence. Now, the reason that this is important to understand is that if we want to say that a person should be held morally responsible for the decisions made by an artificial intelligence that they've created, in my view, this is just like saying a person should be morally responsible for the decisions made by their own children. And imagine I have a child, and then I put that child in this trolley problem, and the child gets to choose whether to pull the lever. Am I responsible for the decisions made by that child? No. Even though I created that child is its own agent with its own intelligence. But here's the caveat. It's the alignment problem that I mentioned earlier. Imagine that human child again. In the same way as artificial intelligence has an alignment problem, if I have a child, there's a possibility that that child's goals might not align with my own. If I'm not a very careful parent, if I'm neglectful of my child, if I don't teach them ethics and manners, and I don't socialize them properly, then they could grow up to be a pretty horrible person. They might grow up to be a serial killer or something like this. Now, if the reason why this child goes on to make these immoral decisions is because I didn't take the proper care in making sure that their interests would align with my own, then I think I can be held at least partially responsible for those actions. If I create an artificial intelligence and I'm not careful enough to make sure that its interests align with my own, then if that artificial intelligence goes bad and starts killing people or making the wrong decision in a trolley problem, then I think that I'm at least in part responsible for that. But of course, if we make the artificial intelligence so aligned with human goals that it always does what human beings always want to do, then I'm going to be responsible all over again because the artificial intelligence is going to just do what I want it to do. So it's a difficult question to answer, but I think it's going to be dependent upon exactly how the alignment problem is addressed in the production of the artificial intelligence that's pulling the lever in this instance. Just a quick intermission to ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to be a lord? Probably not, but then that's probably because you never thought it was possible. As it turns out, the possibility is a very real one. And I'm excited to announce that that is a possibility that I have recently taken up by becoming Lord Alex O'Connor, as evidenced by this certificate. And I was able to become a Lord thanks to Established Titles, a wonderful company who have provided a rather novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while also helping global reforestation efforts. This project is based on a historic custom in Scotland where landowners are referred to as lords or ladies. And by getting a title pack with established titles, you get at least 1 square foot of dedicated land with a unique plot number from a private estate in Edelston, Scotland. And crucially, established titles work with the global charities One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, such that with every order, a tree is going to be planted somewhere in the world to help with global reforestation efforts. What this means is that not only are you becoming a lord or a lady, but you're also helping the environment in doing so. It's up to you to decide which motivation is more important to you, but all you have to do is use the link in the description, establishedtitles.com/Cosmic Skeptic. And it turns out that the first 200 people to get a plot of land with established titles using my unique referral code will get a plot of land right next to mine. So the first 200 of us can build something of a little Cosmic Skeptic empire somewhere in Scotland. And Established Titles is currently running an early Black Friday sale, meaning that if you use the code Cosmic Skeptic at checkout, you'll get an additional 10% off. This makes for a wonderful last-minute gift for somebody else, or just for yourself if you fancy having the actual genuine option to change your name on your plane tickets, on your credit cards, on your dating profiles to Lord or Lady by going to establishedtitles.com/Cosmic Skeptic. The grandfather trolley problem. You are a time traveler. A runaway trolley is heading to kill 5 people. If you pull the lever, only 1 will die, but the person on the track is your grandfather, and your parents haven't even been born yet. What if you pull the lever? Okay, so the grandfather paradox is famously one of the most important paradoxes of time travel. If you go back in time and kill your grandfather, what happens? Now, I'm actually of the opinion that precisely because of paradoxes like this, time travel into the past is impossible. There is a kind of backwards time travel that could be possible, though, that's based on the relativity of time. We know, thanks to Einstein in large part, that time is not linear. Time passes differently depending on how fast you're going and how much gravity is around you. For example, if you were to go and orbit a black hole for a number of years and return to Earth, you'll find that a lot more time will have passed on Earth than passed for you on that spaceship. And this is because time, just like space, is affected by gravity. It's warped and stretched. So imagine you're in a situation where time is passing twice as fast for you than it is for another person. After 10 years on your clock, only 5 years will have passed on the other person's clock. And so although 10 years has passed, if you go and rejoin that other person, it will be kind of as though you'd gone 5 years back in time, because only 5 years would have passed for them. But what you can't do is go -1 or -2 or -3. You can't go back from where you started, in other words. But supposing it were possible, then were you to go back in time and kill your grandparents before your own parents were born, then because your parents never would have been born, you never would have been born, but then who went back and killed the grandfather? This would probably cause the kind of paradox that would bring about the end of the universe, and so for that reason alone, I'm probably going to be tempted to just allow the trolley to run over the 5 people. Ship of Theseus trolley problem. If you do not pull the lever, 1 person will be crushed to death instantly. If you do pull the lever, the trolley will divert onto a 1,000-mile stretch of track with 1 person tied down at the end of it. Now we imagine that as the trolley rolls down this 1,000-mile track, a crew of people systematically switches out every piece of the original trolley with a replacement part. The question is, did the trolley which you diverted kill the man? So this trolley problem is based on the famous thought experiment of the ship of Theseus. You can imagine a large ship made of wooden planks. Now, one of those planks goes rotten and so has to be replaced by a new plank. Still the ship of Theseus, but it's got a new plank in it. But now imagine that another plank goes bad and they have to replace that plank. And then they replace every single plank one by one until every single plank of wood has been replaced. Now imagine that we take all of those bad bits of wood and we reconstruct another ship using those pieces of wood. Which of these ships is the original ship of Theseus? You may also be familiar with this paradox if you've seen Only Fools and Horses.
I am to mention to her one day that I've had the same broom for the last 20 years. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
This paradox is especially relevant to the area of personal identity. What makes you, you, and what makes you the same person as you were yesterday, or indeed 10 years ago? You probably already know that all of the atoms in your body are constantly being replaced by other atoms, such that every 7 years or so, every single atom in your body will have been replaced by another atom. So the you of 10 years from now will have an entirely different set of atoms than the you of today. Now, suppose that all of those atoms that get replaced, all of the ones that are in you today but don't exist in you in 10 years, imagine I were to find all of those old atoms floating about in the universe, and I pulled them together and I reformed you from 10 years ago. Which one would be you? Myself, I'm quite sympathetic to a view called mereological nihilism. Thanks, by the way, to William Lane Craig for introducing that to me a number of years ago. I won't go into detail on what mereological nihilism is here, but I will say that it entails the view that parts don't really exist. Ships don't exist. Planks don't exist. All that really exists is matter. Whatever the subatomic, fundamental matter of the universe is, that's the only thing that exists. And everything else is just the human brain putting linguistic boundaries around things. Take, for example, a table. A table is made up of legs and a tabletop. But these are two separate things. We can identify them separately as the legs and as the tabletop. Now, all we are doing is putting these two things together and just deciding to call them one thing. Now, to see this, imagine that I were to put a mug of coffee on top of the table. Why isn't that mug now part of the table? Why aren't the legs, the tabletop, and the mug all just one thing? Well, they could be. If somebody looked at this and had never seen a table before, had never seen a mug before, didn't know what any of it was, why wouldn't they consider it to be just one big, weirdly shaped object? The only reason that we're able to say that the legs and the tabletop are one thing, separate from the mug, is because we've just decided that that's the case. We just put a linguistic boundary around the table and another linguistic boundary around the mug, and so we consider them to be two different things, but this is a distinction of language, not a real distinction of the objects themselves. So looking at the ship of Theseus, we might see a boat and a sail and a man stood on top of the boat. Now, why is it that we say that the sails and the boat put together form the ship of Theseus, but the person stood on the boat, he's not a part of the ship of Theseus? Well, maybe it's because that person could get off the boat. But we could take the sails off of the boat, we could remove the sails, but we still consider these sails to be a part of the ship of Theseus, even though they're removable. So why don't we consider the person to be a part of the ship of Theseus? The only answer is that we simply decide as human beings that that's the case. All we really have here is a bunch of atoms. But the only thing that makes us able to collect these atoms into objects that we call the ship of Theseus, or that we call the sailor, is the human mind. But to come back to our meme, is it the same trolley? To me, it's as simple as it is the same trolley if we call it the same trolley, and it's not if we don't. Okay, so in this trolley problem, one of the tracks has one person, then two people, then three people, then four people ad infinitum. The other track also has an infinite number of people, but it starts with two people, and then three people, then four people, then five people ad infinitum. And the question is, which track do you send the trolley down? Now, the answer might seem obvious at first. Both tracks have an infinite number of people on them, and so you should be indifferent as to which track the train goes down. But it's not as simple as that. It's important here to distinguish between two concepts: actual infinites and potential infinites. A potential infinite is something that tends towards infinity, but never actually quite reaches it. For example, imagine you die and go to heaven, and you've got an infinite number of days ahead of you. You've got day number 1, then day number 2, then day number 3, and this goes on forever. At any point, you're still going to have lived a finite number of days. It could be 1 billion days or 2 billion days. And sure, this never ends, so it tends towards infinity, but you will have never actually lived an infinite number of days. An actual infinite is a set of infinite things that do actually all exist right now, an infinite number of things. One famous example is Hilbert's Hotel, a hotel with an infinite number of rooms. That hotel exists all at once right now, and it has an actually infinite number of rooms in it. A lot of philosophers think that actual infinites cannot exist in reality, because this leads to all kinds of paradoxes. For example, in Hilbert's Hotel, if I were to add another room onto Hilbert's Hotel, then surely I would have a bigger hotel than I started with. but I would still just have an actually infinite number of rooms, and so that hotel would be the same size as the one that I started with. This seems paradoxical because if infinity add 1 is infinity, and infinity add 2 is infinity, it seems like 1 equals 2, which is obviously not the case. So maybe actual infinites can't exist. But here we're dealing with a potential infinite. That is, we run over one person, then 2 people, then 3 people, then 4 people, and this goes on forever. Some potential infinites are bigger than other potential infinites. To see this, imagine now that you die and go to hell. Now in hell, you're going to experience suffering every day for the rest of eternity. But you're offered a choice. Every single day that you're in hell, you can either experience a level of suffering that's equal to 100 units of pain, or you can experience double that amount of pain every single day, 200 units of pain for every day for the rest of eternity. Which of these should you choose? Well, obviously you should choose 100 units of pain every day instead of 200 units of pain every day. That wouldn't make any sense. Unless you're into pain. Like, I don't judge here, but I'm assuming that that's not the case. But think about it for a second. Hell is infinite. You're going to experience this suffering every single day, infinitely, for the rest of eternity. And so surely you should be indifferent, right? Because if you experience 100 units of pain every day, or 200 units of pain every day, if it's infinite, it's going to be the same amount overall either way, right? No. And that's because it's a potential infinite. Because at any point where you stop to take the measurement, you'll have experienced more pain if you take the second option than you would have if you took the first option. Even though we're tending towards infinity, this one infinity is going to be bigger than the other. And so we can say that the track that begins with 2 people is going to involve more suffering and death than the track that begins with 1 person, even though both are potentially infinite, because, as I say, some potential infinites are bigger than others. Now, there are loads more trolley problem memes that I can look at here, and I always think that I'm going to be looking at more than I actually do in fact look at, because I end up just talking forever on each individual one, and so only end up looking at like 4 or 5, so sorry about that. But that just gives me all the more reason to make another one of these videos. So if you like this, do let me know, and I'll continue this series and we can look at more trolley problem memes together. Either way, I've been Alex O'Connor. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing. Also, you can support me on Patreon via the link in the description if you really like my work. And a special thanks as always to my top tier supporters on Patreon for keeping this channel afloat. So don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.